Hello and welcome to the Flagstaff County podcast. I'm your host, Cary Castagna, Communications Coordinator for Flagstaff County. I am joined today by Sarah Williams, Head Instructor at the Empowered Defense Center in Stony Plain, just west of Edmonton. Sarah, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Cary. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're listening to the official podcast of Flagstaff County.
Now, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. I just wanted to start with your professional background. Can you tell us about your journey in martial arts and self-defense, and how did you become the head instructor at Empowered Defense Center?
Well, I started karate training in the 10th grade, so I was a little late to start because a lot of people start as young children.
Yeah.
But I started training as a teenager and fell absolutely in love with it. I became so addicted to it that at one point I was training for up to 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I became an instructor. And I even changed my major in university to kinesiology so that I could better support my teaching and be able to provide modern training methods. I ended up, though, sort of coming to a crossroads. I needed to decide if it was what I was going to do full time or if I wanted to do something else with my life. And a friend had suggested policing. So I ended up leaving karate and going into the world of policing, which is what I did for the last 7 years before opening Empowered Defense Center. In particular, I specialized in domestic violence. And there I saw a lot of the results of situations where people didn't know how to stand up for themselves, didn't know how to defend themselves, not only physically with the physical skills, but also mentally, and having that confidence and ability to draw those boundaries early in a relationship. And one of the things that I did while I was policing was I wanted to stay connected to my martial arts roots. So I was volunteering my own time to teach at community organizations and in high schools to ensure that these programs were getting out to the people I thought were most in need. Then I came to a point where I was at another crossroads of, do I want to continue policing for the rest of my life, or do I want to do something different? And really, after doing 2 years of specializing in domestic violence, I knew that the best way that I could continue to serve was in something that wasn't continuing to hurt my own mental health.
Yeah.
And so I went back to my true love of martial arts. But instead of going back to karate, I decided to focus purely on that self-defense aspect so that it could be as practical and as useful as humanly possible to the communities that I most want to serve.
Oh, that's very interesting. So let's just talk a little bit about what's coming up. You are scheduled to lead a mother-daughter self-defense class on Sunday, August 25th at the Strome Community Hall. Now, what can participants expect from this mother-daughter self-defense course in Strome?
So this is going to be a fantastic introductory level self-defense course. It doesn't require any amount of previous martial arts training or any particular fitness level. This is designed to be as accessible as possible and to give you a streamlined delivery of really efficient strikes and escapes from common grabs that you will be able to use under pressure. There are no flying side kicks and no 9-step routines for you to memorize.
Yeah.
We try to keep it super, super simple so that you can actually use these moves under stress.
Okay, so what are the primary goals of the course, and what do you hope attendees will take away from it?
The main goal is that everyone walks away feeling more confident in their ability to defend themselves and not like they will be utterly demolished if caught off guard. We want to start introducing concepts, not only the physical skills, but mental skills that help us to avoid those fights in the first place and those situations that can be dangerous. And we want to build people's confidence that they know that they can prevent those situations from occurring. But if they do, if something happens beyond your control, you know you can handle yourself.
Yeah, so how much involved is preparation and just kind of putting yourself in the right situation, because that plays a big part in it also.
Oh, self-defense is 90% prevention and proactive skills. A great outcome is that I teach you these physical skills and you never, ever, ever have to use them. That's proper self-defense.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just learning how to fight.
Yeah.
And so it's very, very important that we talk about the proactive skill sets and the mindset that goes attached to self-defense, which is different from martial arts and other sport training.
All right. So can you describe your teaching philosophy when it comes to self-defense?
My main philosophy is that if it doesn't feel natural in your body and it doesn't sort of flow, you're not going to do it in panic. So we do a lot of introducing a variety of skills, but then I don't expect everybody to remember every single thing that I teach. I really try to encourage people to build their own combinations of the moves that I'm teaching and see what feels right in their body, so that people can develop their own individual skill set for self-defense rather than saying, well, I have to do it this way or I have to do it that way. My goal is that people get to understand their own bodies and their own natural reflexes a little bit better and build on that rather than thinking you have to fully rewire yourself.
Yeah, because it has to become second nature, right?
It
Like,
does. And most people don't have years and years and years to get a black belt. My
yeah.
black belt took 7 years, and on average, a lot of other karate black belts take 10 years. Some skills like jujitsu, hardly anyone is going to get a black belt because it takes so long to progress. And so I really want people to know that you can learn those essentials and those basics efficiently.
All right, Sarah, how do you balance physical techniques with mental preparedness in your courses?
In the course, we always do a solid balance, maybe not quite 50-50 because the mental stuff is easier to pick up than the
Hmm.
physical stuff. But I make sure that we integrate quite a few different self-defense concepts in our discussion throughout the course. They're a great little breather too, so that you're not running your body into the ground with hours and hours of physical training. So we get to take little breaks, have discussions, and it's always a very open sort of format because I think people know more than they think they do. And when we start sharing it as a discussion, rather than me just talking at people, so many fabulous ideas come out of people that they didn't even know they had in their head. They've heard it somewhere once and then forgotten about it. But as soon as it's a
Hmm.
discussion and we start making a plan as a group for how to handle these things, you can really see it start to come together.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a very useful course. Yeah, for
I
sure.
certainly hope that everyone takes that away. I think it's super useful. I think it's something that everyone should do. This is a mothers and daughters course, but in my regular training studio, we have mixed genders. I think it's an essential skill for everyone. Just like if you're going to be around water, you should learn how to swim.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I just want to get into the self-defense techniques. What are some fundamental self-defense techniques that you believe everyone should know?
I think everybody needs to have a good striking basis because in a panic, that's what your body is going to do first anyway. And so if I can teach you how to strike in a way that minimizes your own risk of injury to yourself, that's the best way to sort of start the ball rolling. But then there are a couple of escapes that I make sure to always include when I do an introductory course of this length. One is a escape from a wrist grab because a lot of physical confrontations are initiated with a wrist grab. Maybe they are grabbing your wrist in order to drag you somewhere. Maybe they're grabbing your wrist in order to hold you in place while they punch you, lose your consciousness a little bit. Maybe they are holding you by the wrist only so they can pull you in closer and grab you and take you to the ground. If we can get really efficient at a wrist escape, we can reduce the likelihood of ending up in a worse position later. The other one I really like to include, which will be in this course, is strangulation escapes, because they are unfortunately more common than we think, especially in violence directed towards women. And it's one of those situations where every single second of your reaction time counts. So we want to start drilling those escapes as early in a program as possible so that you can really build that muscle memory and be able to do it instead of panicking when your airway's closing in.
All right. Now, I don't want you to give away all your tricks, but because we want people to, come to the course on August 25th in Strome. But I'm just wondering, how do you teach students to stay calm and react effectively in a high stress situation?
The biggest secret to staying calm is knowing what's going on. Panic sets in with that element of the unknown. So by training these things, even just knowing you've been in this situation before in training, is enough to help you feel more in control when it's happening in real life. There is some semblance of, oh, this has happened, I know what to do. We're training our brains to get that sense of sort of stress in the training, but controlled stress. There's certainly nothing scary happening in this course. I personally believe that you will remember things more if you're laughing along the way. But we do create the illusion of stress through things like, covering your eyes so you don't know when the attack is coming. Maybe you don't know which hand is going to be grabbed. So we increase those small amounts of controlled stress to start to train the mind and the body to react under higher levels of stress when it happens later.
Well, that makes sense. How does learning self-defense contribute to a person's overall confidence and sense of empowerment?
I think that walking around with the knowledge that you have these skills is a huge improvement in our ability to not only defend ourselves and feel confident about it, but it actually changes the way we interact with the world and makes us less likely to be chosen as a victim. And I think after we sort of discuss that and why that is in the course, a lot of people sort of have that light bulb moment and recognize I'm in so much more control of this than I thought I was. And I think that's the difference is we kind of go through life prior to a course like this thinking, well, I don't know. It could happen anytime. It could happen to anyone. And that's somewhat true. But we have a lot of control over ourselves and over the work that we do in preparation. And I think getting back that sense of control over the potential of violence is what really increases confidence.
Oh, for sure. Now, can you share any success stories or feedback from past participants that highlight the impact of your courses?
Yeah, so actually, we just did our first round of testing for people at our Stony Plain location who are doing 3-month-long training sessions. And part of their application for the test, they were asked how they've changed from the beginning of their training to now. And the feedback we got was amazing. It was everything from increased confidence and increased, skill development, which we would expect to see. But we also had people who said, they really felt like they had built a sense of community with the people that they were training with and this sense of trust. They felt more prepared. They felt more confident. They felt stronger. They felt often more physically fit. Now, that's a longer training program than the one that we'll be presenting in Strome, but it's very similar content. And so I'm very hopeful that for this occasion, we'll at least have people increasing that confidence and that feeling that they have more control over what's going to be happening.
All right. So what motivated you to bring the mother-daughter self-defense course to Strome?
It was kind of a funny roundabout thing, actually. Back when I was the domestic violence unit coordinator for Parkland RCMP, I put on something called Relationship Judo, which was a full-day seminar that blended self-defense and domestic violence resources and information. And that was a free program that we put on for the community. And one of your community members happened to be there. And she loved it so much, she invited me to speak at an event that they were hosting that was, again, on domestic violence. And I did a speech there about police and how we approach domestic violence files and did a self-defense seminar. And it was just such a lovely experience to come into the community and to be welcomed and to see that there was that interest out there. And knowing that there wasn't really something like this available yet. And so we had started building that relationship. But of course, after I left policing, it seemed like the opportunities to continue working together were gone. But then we ran into each other spontaneously. So the universe wanted me to come back and
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
together very quickly. And I'm super excited about it.
Wow, that's awesome. So how important is community involvement and support in the success of self-defense training programs?
It's very important, definitely in terms of just being able to provide it. You kind of need at least a handful of people in order to run those programs, in order to have them going. So you need community interest just to be able to have access for starters. But then also, I think having a community that prioritizes self-defense really brings you together in this discussion of how do we keep not only ourselves safe, but our communities safe. And that opens up a whole other field of discussion and really this sense of empowerment through numbers and not just having to worry about yourself. So I really emphasize community involvement, not only in a self-defense program, but as just togetherness is
Mhm.
fantastic for a community.
For sure. Now, what advice would you give to someone who is new to self-defense and may feel intimidated about starting? Because I mean, we want them to sign up for the course. So what would you tell them?
So the number one objection that I get when I'm speaking to people who are on the fence about whether or not they should take something like this is they don't know if they are fit enough or ready enough. And I would say to you, thinking that you're not fit enough or ready enough might be the reason that you need to do it. People who are lacking in confidence and don't look like they can defend themselves are more likely to be selected as victims. It's a factor that we need to pay attention to. And this doesn't require a high level of fitness. It doesn't require previous martial arts training. It truly is for beginners. You don't have to have ever even thrown a punch before. We really are going to start from the bare bones. And I don't want anyone to think that a fitness level is a reason to not participate. It's absolutely not. In fact, it is a reason to participate.
All right, well said. Are there any common misconceptions about self-defense that you'd like to address?
Yes. So the number one is that unfortunately that one seminar is enough. I mentioned
Mm.
swimming before, and this is one of the reasons that I opened Empowered Defense Center. You wouldn't put your kids in one day of swimming lessons and then throw them in the ocean by themselves and assume that they can cut it. I really want to emphasize that I'm happy to come and deliver this information, this seminar, but you got to practice afterwards. It is a muscle memory driven skill. And so I very much hope it's another reason that community is important because you need training partners. You need people to practice with. And that's my main thing about self-defense that I would like to change is this notion that you can just get in, get out, and be protected for the rest of your life. Those mindset shifts, they can happen in a single day, but you got to
Mhm.
practice what I teach afterwards.
Yeah, everything takes practice.
Absolutely.
All right, I just want to get into some self-defense tips. Could you share some practical tips that mothers and daughters can start practicing right away before August 25th?
Yeah, absolutely. The number one tip is called situational awareness. It's being aware of the situation around you, especially in today's culture where we're bombarded with distractions, particularly that phone in our pocket. So many people are not looking around at the environment around them and at the people around them. And sometimes we feel like, oh, maybe it's rude if I'm looking at somebody. Well, we're not telling you to stare, but I am telling you to look around and pay attention to what's going on. Do you know who's around you? Could you describe them afterwards if they were an attacker? Are you paying attention to where the exits and entrances are to the buildings that you're in? It's tips like that that are really the foundation because it's people who are oblivious who are again much more likely to be chosen in an attack, and we want to start really paying attention to what's going on around us. I know that sometimes the feedback I get on that is, well, I don't want to seem paranoid.
Mhm.
And I say to that, well, you're not paranoid when you look both ways before you cross the street. And you're not paranoid when you are driving around in your car and looking in other lanes before you change lanes. In that situation, we're used to thinking of cars as threats. It's not that paranoid to start looking around people and asking, is this a threat? Should I stay away from this one? We don't want to get hit by cars and we don't want to get hit by people.
Exactly. So I'm thinking too that we may not, or we should not be staring at our phones all the time either, right? Because
Of
that
course not.
obviously takes away from situational awareness.
Absolutely. I'll give you an example of a situation that's not a self-defense one, but there was recently a situation where a girl was staring at her phone while waiting to cross the street. And
Mhm.
she became so absorbed in it, she didn't notice that her friends had crossed without her. And she looked up, realized her friends were gone, and bolted straight into the oncoming traffic.
Oh, geez.
Fortunately, she was okay, but it's definitely something that we need to start paying attention to because it's already taking away from our abilities that we develop as kids to look both ways before we cross the street. So it's absolutely taking away from our ability to look up and pay attention to all of the other people that are around us who could be armed, could be hiding around a corner. Paying attention is absolutely the number one thing people should start practicing. And it's so easy to do. It doesn't require any training. So that's why I
Yeah.
like to throw it out as an easy tip.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So what are some everyday safety tips to help individuals stay aware and prepared in various environments?
Well, you started with one already, and that's putting the phone down.
Yeah.
And then I touched on this as well. When we're talking about different environments, one of the number one things we want to know is where are the exits? How can I safely leave this location if something does start happening? There's a reason when we get on planes, they tell you to look where the nearest exits are and where all of the other ones are too, in case the nearest one to you is blocked. And we should be doing that every time we go into a new space or even a familiar space. Some of them we only know kind of well because we take the same routes all the time. So exits is one thing we should start be looking for in our environments. The other things we should be paying attention to are there items in here that could be used as a potential weapon or as a potential shield, either for myself or for the bad guy? If
Mm-hmm.
I'm being attacked, I don't probably want to run into a room that's full of knives, like a kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to look for in your environment is the people who are there, which we've already kind of discussed, but also what about hiding locations? I talk to this about with the kids that I teach a lot is where could you hide? But as we get older, obviously those spaces are limited, but where could an attacker be hiding? Can I clear around this corner without somebody jumping out at me? I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to where are potential spots that someone could be lying in wait, especially if I'm in a less populated area.
All right. Well, that's some great advice. Now, what do you find most rewarding about teaching self-defense?
Oh, it's definitely seeing that those light bulb moments when people start to pick up on why we're doing what we're doing. Because sometimes it can just seem like a string of techniques, just a move and a move and a move. But when you start to put them together and they see how they flow and they see that they can make them flow, I love seeing that moment when people go, oh. And I had
Yeah.
that in class the other night. I have one of my students is in level 2 now, and she's just starting to see how all of the level 1 material clicks together, which it's just so fun to watch because she probably said, oh, about 8 times in yesterday's class.
Wow.
And I just love that moment of realization when people start to put things together and recognize it as this dynamic skill set rather than just a string of moves.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, how do you stay motivated and continue to evolve as an instructor and martial artist?
Well, for me, it's really easy because I love it. I
Mm.
remember when I was a police officer, I used to always joke that my favorite part of my current job was my old job, teaching
Oh,
martial arts. And so it doesn't feel like work and it doesn't feel like a challenge to be always out there looking for new material and learning from new teachers. I just took a course a couple of months ago from a different instructor I hadn't worked with before, thought he was absolutely fabulous. And so I love looking for other perspectives and sort of weighing them against what I know to be the reality based on my policing experience versus, how are martial artists teaching this? And I just think that there's so many different fascinating places to learn from that it's easy. It's easy to I'm overwhelmed with places to look up right now.
oh, wow. Yeah. Now, let's gaze a little bit into the future. What are your future plans for the Empowered Defense Center? Are there any upcoming programs or initiatives you're excited about?
So my future plans for Empowered Defense Center are quite far in the future at the moment because it is a new business. But I would really love to see it become a staple of the community in Stony Plain where people do understand that, it's just as essential as swimming lessons. I would love for people to know that they can put their kids in it, get them through these couple of levels of really learning a variety of skills. And then even if they love it, continue on with another martial art and go get their black belt. I would love to encourage that kind of community building.
Hmm.
And then in terms of big projects, we've got some summer camps that are going to be running this year. And then I'm quite involved with a couple of different school programs, which I'm really excited about. I started dabbling in them before the summer, but I am in high schools, I'm in a homeschool program, I'm in a specialty schooling program. And I really like that opportunity to work with kids and teens because then I can get to people before some of those patterns of abuse start to set in, and we
Hmm.
can really sort of work that preventative angle. So I'm really excited about those. But in general, our classes run year round. There is no start and stop end date. because I wanted these classes to be as accessible as possible. You don't have to wait, 6 months for the next seminar. You can come by anytime.
All right. So how do you envision the future of self-defense training, especially for women and young girls?
I think that I would love to see it again become a staple. I think it should be for everybody, not just women and girls, but to have that be just a staple technique, because I think that by turning it into something that everyone knows, it becomes something that no one has to use.
Mhm.
And that's what I want. That is the world I would love to live in, where my own job becomes completely obsolete because we actually love and trust each other. But I do think first we need to get to that position where it's just understood that basically anyone that bad guy's trying to attack in the street probably has self-defense training, because I think that will defer or greatly minimize the potential victim pool that people are selecting from. And I am hopeful that that would reduce violence overall. That's my plan, at least.
Yeah. Okay, Sarah, one more question. Have you ever been to Strome?
I have not been to Strome specifically yet, so I'm
Oh, okay.
super excited to come.
Well, Strome is looking forward to hosting you August 25th again at the Strome Community Hall. Thank you very much, Sarah, for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. It's been a pleasure having you on the Flagstaff County podcast, and we look forward to seeing you in Strome.
I'm so looking forward to it too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and all the best.
All right, you too.